When you consider Palestine, you might immediately think of violence, seizures, and the enduring Israeli occupation. However, what you might not be aware of is the influential role played by another country in fueling the region's conflicts: Imperial Britain. From 1516 to 1917, Palestine was under Ottoman Empire rule. It was a religiously diverse land where Christians, Muslims, and Jews coexisted. In the early 1900s, a small number of European Jews were working to gain support for Zionism in the establishment of a Jewish homeland. Just 2 decades earlier, in 1897, this movement, led by 𝘂𝗍𝗿, was initiated at a conference in Switzerland. They decided to advocate for a Jewish homeland in Palestine, despite having limited support, as only 8% of the population in Palestine was Jewish at the time. Simultaneously, Palestinians were aspiring to establish an independent state. Imperial Britain was well aware of the ambitions of both Zionists and Palestinians, and they skillfully utilized the situation to advance their own interests. In 1914, during World War I, Britain entered into conflict with the Ottoman Empire. In 1915, Henry Macmahon, Britain's representative in Cairo, approached Arab leaders with the proposal Britain would support Arab independence if they helped in the fight against the Ottomans. Then, in 1917, the Balfour Declaration, authored by British Secretary Arthur Balfour to Walter Rothschild, a prominent figure in the Jewish community, expressed Britain's aim to establish a national home for Jewish people in Palestine. At this point, Britain had promised independence to Arabs in Palestine while also pledging to establish a Jewish homeland in a land that was already inhabited. When the Ottoman Empire collapsed in 1918, the British and the French emerged victorious. The Arabs, having been promised the land, sought to claim it, but the British and the French had their own hidden plans. They held a secret meeting during which they decided to divide the captured Ottoman provinces into areas of British and French control and influence. The British received Palestine, Jordan, and southern Iraq, while the French took control of southeast Turkey, northern Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. This secret agreement was known as 𝘂𝗍𝗿𝗂𝗍 agreement. Upon discovering the secret agreements, Arabs were left in disbelief. Feeling deceived by the British and the French, they had initially fought the non-Arabs, expecting self-determination, only to find themselves under the rule of European colonial powers. The Arab aspirations for independence were seemingly betrayed. Following the British occupation of Palestine, a significant development unfolded in Europe. The Zionist movement had been rapidly gaining momentum, actively lobbying for support to encourage mass Jewish migration to Palestine and acknowledge Jewish claims to the land. In a surprising turn of events, in 1917, Britain publicly announced its intention to establish a Jewish state. This declaration essentially meant that British authorities were granting Palestinian land to the Zionists, which further complicated the already volatile situation in the region. Now, what exactly is Zionism? Zionism is a colonial movement that sought to establish a Jewish state in historic Palestine through any means necessary. Has a complex history. The ideological roots of Zionism can be traced back to 𝘂𝗍𝗿𝗍𝗍. An Austrian Jew, often dubbed the father of political Zionism, this movement gained momentum in the late 19th century, fueled by the rise of anti-Semitism in Europe. As it progressed, Zionism garnered support from Western European governments, especially after Zionists opted for the establishment of a Jewish state in historic Palestine. The early objectives of Zionists were ambitious: to secure as much of historic Palestine as possible, which often entailed displacing the Palestinian population. Their efforts also encouraged large-scale migration of European Jews to Palestine during the first half of the 20th century. However, despite their endeavors and the alarming surge in anti-Semitism, Arabs still outnumbered Jews in Palestine. As Israeli historian 𝘂𝗍𝗿𝗄𝗍 and others have argued, Zionist leaders recognized that fulfilling their vision would necessitate the forced removal of indigenous Palestinian population. In 1948, David Ben-Gurion, then the head of World Zionist Organization, officially declared the establishment of State of Israel in Palestine. The foundational idea was that Israel would serve as a secure national homeland for Jews worldwide, offering the opportunity for any Jewish individual to migrate and claim citizenship. Critics, on the other hand, contend that Zionism shares similarities with colonialism. They point to the violent displacement of indigenous Palestinian population and the construction of illegal settlements in the occupied Palestinian territories as compelling evidence. Fast forward to 2023. On October 7th, after the attacks, Benjamin Netanyahu declared that they are at war. but the Palestinians have been at war since day one. Here, we're talking about 70 plus years of oppression. The Gaza Strip, a narrow piece of land sandwiched between Israel and Egypt, is referred to as the largest open-air prison. Nearly 16,000 people have been killed as of November 6, 2023, and out of which nearly 7,000 children have been killed. So from killing of children, women, elderly, non-combatant civilians, innocent civilians, and destruction of mosques, churches, hospitals, schools, etc. One of the oldest churches in Gaza was destroyed, multiple mosques, hospitals where people were taking shelters, most importantly using white phosphorus on innocent civilians. And I can go on and on with these stats, but yet all these are completely ignored by majority Western medias, not all. And by ignoring all the history, the only question asked by them is, do you condemn Hamas?